The music plays through my phone screen. I watch the white dress float down the aisle in slow motion, the bouquet of roses trembling in delicate hands. My sister's wedding is happening right now. Not in person though. I'm watching through someone's Instagram live stream, sitting on my couch 3,000 miles away. My suitcase is still packed by the door where I left it 2 days ago. My bridesmaid dress still hangs in the closet, tags attached, never worn. The flight confirmation I kept checking my email for never came. The night before the wedding, I called my dad one last time. My voice was steady even though my hands shook. "Did you book the ticket?" I asked. He sighed like I was annoying him. "You didn't remind me again, Leona. You always do this, always making things difficult. Like it was my fault he forgot." Now my whole family beams in a group photo on Instagram. Everyone's there. Everyone except me. My name is Leona and I'm 26 years old. For most of my life, I thought I was just the quiet daughter, the low-maintenance one who didn't need much attention. But that day, staring at my phone screen while my sister married someone I'd never even met, I realized something else. I wasn't low maintenance. I was forgettable, erasable, disposable. My dad remarried when I was 13 after my mom died. His new wife brought my half-sister into our lives, a bubbly 10-year-old named Rochelle, who quickly became the center of everything. At first, I tried to be understanding. They were building a new family. I was the teenager who reminded everyone of the wife and mother we'd lost. So I stayed quiet, made myself smaller, easier. I told myself it was temporary, that eventually things would balance out. They never did. That night after the wedding I wasn't at, I sat alone in my apartment. No one called. No one texted to ask where I was. Not my sister. Not my father. Not even my stepmother. And something inside me cracked open like an egg hitting concrete. I couldn't stop watching his Facebook page. Dad posted a long, heartfelt speech about the wedding. Photos of him walking Rochelle down the aisle. A toast he gave at the reception. "My daughters," he said in the video, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm so proud of them both." Both? I replayed it 3 times to make sure I heard correctly. He said both. He forgot I existed while claiming to include me. The comments poured in. "Beautiful family. Such a proud father. Blessed beyond measure." I scrolled through every single one. Nobody noticed I wasn't in any photos. Nobody asked why. Because to them, I'd never existed in the first place. But here's what killed me most. Dad had time to write that speech. Time to memorize it. Time to deliver it perfectly on camera. Time to get himself on a plane, book his hotel, rent his tuxedo. He just didn't have time to click purchase on my ticket. That wasn't forgetfulness. That was a choice. The photo showed up 3 days later. My stepmother posted it with a long caption. She wore white lace with pearls, holding Rochelle's hand at the reception. They were both crying happy tears. The caption read, "Couldn't have raised a more beautiful bride. So grateful I got to be your mother through it all." Raised. That word sat in my chest like a stone. She raised her. She erased me. Because that's what happens when you marry a widower with a daughter. You don't add to the family. You replace what came before. I read the comments. "So beautiful. You're an amazing mom. What a blessing." I closed the app and stared at my ceiling for an hour. My mom died when I was 11. For 2 years, it was just me and Dad. We were a team. We cooked terrible dinners together. We watched bad movies. We grieved together. Then he met someone new. And suddenly I was in the way. A reminder of sadness. An obstacle to his fresh start. So he did what people do with obstacles. He moved me aside. 2 weeks after the wedding, a card arrived in the mail. Cream-colored. Expensive cardstock. My name written in elegant calligraphy. I opened it carefully. Inside was a pre-printed thank you card. "Thank you for celebrating our special day with us. With love, Rochelle and Marcus." It was completely blank except for their printed names. No personal message. No apology. No acknowledgement that I wasn't actually there. I held it in my hands like a paper cut that wouldn't stop stinging. How do you thank someone for not showing up? How do you send a generic card to someone who missed the wedding because you never sent them a ticket? The answer was simple. You don't think about them at all. I put the card in a drawer. Not because I wanted to keep it, but because I needed to remember. Remember what it felt like to be treated like I didn't matter. Remember so I'd never forget what I was about to do. 3 months after the wedding, I got a notification. Someone added me to a group chat. Finally, I thought, maybe they realized their mistake. I opened it. The group was called Family Planning Retreat. There were 12 people in it. My dad, my stepmother, Rochelle and her new husband Marcus, my aunt and uncle, my cousins. But when I scrolled through the messages, I realized something. They'd been planning this trip for weeks. This wasn't the original group chat. This was a new one. My cousin Iris sent me a screenshot later that day. The original group chat was called Family Trip, Adults Only. It had 13 people. Everyone except me. Someone had written, should we invite Leona? My stepmother replied, she's difficult. She'd probably decline anyway. Let's keep it simple. They never asked. They just decided for me. Decided I was too difficult. Too much trouble. Not worth the effort of an invitation. Then they created a second group chat and added me 3 days before the trip. Just late enough that I couldn't possibly make arrangements to join. I didn't scream. I didn't send angry texts. I didn't call my father crying or demanding explanations. I did something nobody expected. I stayed completely silent. I left the group chat without comment. I didn't respond to my dad's confused text asking why I left. I didn't engage when my stepmother sent a passive-aggressive message about being ungrateful. Because I'd learned something important over the years. The one thing that scares manipulators more than anger is silence. Anger they can use against you. They can call you dramatic, unstable, difficult. They can make you the problem. But silence makes them wonder, makes them worry, makes them realize they've lost control of the narrative. So I went silent, not forever, just long enough to plan. Because revenge isn't about explosion. It's about precision. And I was about to become very, very precise. 6 months after the wedding, I wasn't invited to. Dad called with exciting news. He wanted to have dinner. Just the two of us. Something important to discuss. I agreed and met him at an expensive steakhouse downtown. He ordered wine and seemed unusually cheerful. After the appetizers arrived, he launched into his announcement. He was setting up a family trust. Legacy planning, he called it. Making sure everyone was taken care of when he and my stepmother were gone. He talked about responsibility and family values and building something that would last generations. Then he mentioned the names, the beneficiaries, Rochelle, her husband Marcus, my stepmother. 3 names. He paused like he was waiting for me to congratulate him. I smiled and took a sip of wine. Sounds wonderful, I said. He blinked. That's it? No questions. I shrugged. You clearly have it all figured out. He looked almost disappointed, like he'd been hoping for a reaction. Instead, he got nothing. And nothing was exactly where my plan began. 2 weeks later, Dad called again. He sounded stressed. The trust paperwork was more complicated than he'd expected. Documents everywhere. Deadlines he didn't understand. His lawyer kept using words he couldn't follow. I don't suppose you'd be willing to help, he asked. You always were organized. I paused just long enough to make him wonder if I'd say no. Then I agreed. We met at his lawyer's office the next day. The lawyer's name was Heath Morrison. Mid-50s, expensive suit, the kind of smile that never quite reaches the eyes. He seemed surprised to see me. Your father mentioned you'd be helping coordinate the paperwork, Heath said, shaking my hand. He speaks very highly of your attention to detail. I smiled. Dad looked relieved. He thought I was helping because I'd forgiven him. Because I'd accepted my place as the forgotten daughter who'd be grateful for whatever scraps he tossed my way. He had no idea. Sometimes revenge starts with a smile and a folder. Heath handed me thick stacks of documents. Trust agreements, asset schedules, beneficiary designations, tax forms, everything that made up my father's estate planning. Just look these over, Heath said. Make sure all the names and details are correct. Flag anything that seems off. I took them home and read every single page. Not once, 3 times. I studied every clause, every provision, every single word of legal language that most people would skim right past. That's where I found them. The vulnerabilities, the loopholes, The weak points in a document that assumed everyone would cooperate and nobody would challenge anything. There was a provision about equal treatment of biological children, another about the grounds for contesting the trust, a clause about what happens if someone can prove they were excluded based on favoritism or discrimination. I took notes, careful, detailed notes. Then I started documenting everything. Every missed birthday, every family event I wasn't invited to, every text message where I was blamed for their negligence. Evidence, mountains of it. I was building a case, and they had no idea. The comments started getting to me around month 7. Little jabs disguised as concern. Dad would say things like, "You always act like the victim, Leona. That's why people don't reach out." Or my stepmother would sigh and tell relatives, "We've tried with her, but she's so distant." Some people just can't accept new family dynamics. It was gaslighting, rewriting history, making my exclusion my fault. Every time I pulled back to protect myself, they blamed my distance, called me difficult, said I was holding grudges. They made themselves the victims of my hurt feelings. So this time I did something different. Instead of pulling away, I leaned in. I accepted every dinner invitation. I showed up to family events with a smile. I helped Dad with his paperwork. I was pleasant and cooperative, and exactly what they'd always said I wasn't. They thought I'd finally learned my place. They thought I'd accepted being lesser. They had no idea I was documenting every single interaction, recording every dismissive comment, saving every text message that revealed their true feelings. I was building something, not a bridge, a trap. I found out the real reason by accident. Dad was meeting with his financial advisor, a man named Robert who'd handled our family's money for 20 years. I was at Dad's house dropping off some trust documents when Robert arrived. They didn't know I was still in the kitchen. Their voices carried through the open doorway. "Are you sure you want to exclude Leona completely?" Robert asked. "She's your biological daughter. That could complicate things legally." Dad sighed. "Leona's always been independent. She doesn't need this. Besides, it simplifies things. Rochelle and her husband are building a family. They need the support more." Need. That word hit me like a fist to the chest. It wasn't that I didn't deserve anything. It wasn't even that they'd forgotten about me. They'd actively decided I didn't need to be included because I was independent, because I'd learned to survive without them, because I'd made it easy for them to forget about me. I stood in that kitchen with my hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound. Then I walked out the back door before they could see me. I sat in my car for 20 minutes before I could drive, but I didn't cry. I just added it to my notes. My birthday came in November. I turned 27 on a Tuesday. I didn't expect much. Maybe a text from Dad. Maybe a card in the mail like last year. Instead, I got nothing. Complete silence. But the next day, I saw something on Facebook. Dad had posted an elaborate happy birthday message to Rochelle, even though her birthday wasn't for 3 more months. It was one of those early posts. A huge photo collage. Baby pictures mixed with recent photos. A long caption about how proud he was, how blessed he felt, how she brought so much joy into his life. The post had been up for 6 hours when I saw it. 43 comments. All the same relatives who'd forgotten mine. The post before that? Vacation photos from Hawaii. Posted the day before my birthday. So he'd been online, active, posting and commenting and engaging. He just chose not to remember me. I screenshot everything. Added it to my folder. The evidence was growing, and so was my resolve. A few weeks later, I met Heath for coffee. Casual, professional. I had some questions about the trust documents. Nothing that raised suspicion. We sat in a quiet corner of a downtown cafe. He ordered black coffee. I ordered tea. We made small talk about the weather and the holidays. Then I asked my question. Made it sound hypothetical, academic. What happens if someone contests a trust? I asked. Say, they have proof of exclusion based on favoritism. How strong would that case be? He'd set down his coffee slowly. He studied my face. Well, he said carefully, if someone could prove they were intentionally excluded as a biological heir, especially if there's a pattern of favoritism toward non-biological children, the trust wouldn't hold up well in court. I nodded thoughtfully. Interesting. I was reading about a case like that online. seemed complicated. He watched me for a long moment. Then he said something unexpected. Leona, if you ever need legal advice, separately from your father's matter, my door is open. He knew, or at least suspected, and he just told me he'd help. I finished my tea and thanked him for his time. As I left, I felt the first real spark of hope I'd had in months. I spent December preparing. I created a formal document. Not a lawsuit yet, just a challenge. A legal statement citing emotional abuse, systemic neglect, and unequal treatment. I attached evidence, 37 pages of it. Text messages where I was excluded from family planning. Screenshots of birthdays acknowledged and birthdays ignored. Photos from events where every family member appeared except me. The group chats I was never added to. The wedding invitation that was never sent. The trust documents that excluded me completely. I highlighted every inconsistency in Dad's claim that he treated all his children equally. Every contradiction between his public statements and his private actions. It was devastating. Thorough. Completely factual. But I didn't file it. Not yet. Timing was everything. And I was waiting for the perfect moment. The moment when it would hurt exactly as much as being left behind had hurt me. That moment was coming. I could feel it. The moment arrived at Sunday brunch in January. The whole family gathered at my dad's house. Me, Dad, my stepmother, Rochelle and Marcus, my aunt and uncle, my cousins. Everyone eating and laughing and pretending we were all one big happy family. That's when Dad said it. He was telling a story about the trust, about how much work it had been to set up. Someone asked if I minded not being included. He laughed. Leona? Oh, she'll be fine. She doesn't care about this stuff. Never has. Money isn't important to her. He said it casually, like it was a known fact. Like I told him this. Heath was there. He'd been invited to discuss some final trust details. And when Dad made that comment, Heath's expression changed. His eyes moved from my father to me. He'd seen my face, seen the way I'd gone very still, very quiet, the way I carefully set down my fork and excused myself to the bathroom. When I came back, Heath pulled me aside in the hallway. I need to talk to you, he said quietly. Privately. This week. Everything was about to change. We met at Heath's office on Wednesday morning. He closed the door and sat across from me. Your father's trust may not hold, he said without preamble. If you want to file a formal challenge, I would support it. In fact, I think you should. I blinked. You're his lawyer. I'm a lawyer who specializes in estate planning. And what your father is doing isn't just unfair. It's legally questionable. If this went to court, any judge would see the pattern. He pulled out a file. Inside were notes. Things he'd observed over the months. Comments Dad had made. Ways he described me versus how he described Rochelle. I took this case because I've known your father for years, he'd said. But I've watched how he treats you. And I've read the documents you helped organize. You documented everything perfectly. Whether you meant to or not, you built a case. He slid a business card across the desk. His personal cell number was written on the back. When you're ready to file, call me. I'll help you. I took the card. The game had just flipped completely. And my father had no idea. The invitation arrived in March. Heavy cardstock. Expensive printing. My cousin's wedding. The ceremony would be in June at a vineyard in Napa Valley. I opened it expecting to see the usual. Leona Hayes and guest. But there was something different this time. A small note tucked inside. Handwritten. We hope you can make it, Leona. We've missed you. I called my cousin Iris that night. We'd always been close before the family dynamics got complicated. Did you send invitations to everyone? I asked carefully. There was a pause. Not everyone, she said. We kept the list small. Just people we actually want there. I understood immediately. Dad didn't get one? No. And he won't. Iris, I've watched what they've done to you. How they've treated you. I'm done pretending it's okay. Something warm spread through my chest. Thank you, I whispered. A week later, I heard through the family grapevine that Dad had found out. He'd asked my aunt about the wedding. She'd been vague, uncomfortable. He'd pushed. Finally, she'd told him. It's a small ceremony. Not everyone could be invited. His smile had faltered. They must have assumed I'd be busy, he'd said. No, Dad. They knew exactly what they were doing, and I'd made sure of it. The family trip happened in April. A beach vacation. 10 days in Costa Rica. Photos started flooding Instagram on day 2. My stepmother and Rochelle building sandcastles. My cousins drinking cocktails at sunset. My aunt doing yoga on the beach. Beautiful, candid shots of everyone laughing and relaxed. But something was different about these photos. Someone was missing. Dad wasn't in any of them. Not a single picture. I checked carefully, scrolled through every post, every story, every tagged photo. He'd been completely edited out of the trip. Or more accurately, he'd never been invited. I knew because I'd paid for the photographer. When Iris told me about the trip, I'd offered to cover professional photos as my gift. The photographer was someone I'd hired specifically. Someone who understood the assignment. To capture the family. Just not all of it. When they got back, Dad saw the photos. I heard about it from my aunt. He looked confused, she told me. Asked why there weren't any pictures of him. I told him the truth. That he wasn't there. That he wasn't invited. For the first time in 13 years, my father understood what it felt like to be excluded. To be forgotten. To watch everyone else live their lives without you. And we were just getting started. I filed the challenge in May. Heath helped me prepare everything. We crafted it carefully, not as a lawsuit yet, but as a formal legal challenge to the trust structure. We cited the exclusion of a biological heir. We presented evidence of systematic favoritism. We attached documentation of unequal treatment spanning 13 years. We included testimony from family members who'd witnessed the dynamic. Even Iris provided a statement. We referenced the clause in Dad's own trust documents. The one that said if any heir was intentionally excluded based on bias or neglect, the trust must be restructured. He'd signed that clause himself, probably never read it carefully, probably assumed it would never apply to him. He filed everything with the probate court. Within a week, Dad received notification. He called me immediately. His voice was tight, angry. What the hell is this, Leona? I kept my voice calm. It's a legal challenge. I'm exercising my rights as your biological heir. You're trying to destroy the family. No, Dad. I'm trying to be included in it. There's a difference. He hung up on me. But the damage was done. The challenge was official. And he couldn't ignore it away. The hearing was scheduled for July. We met at the courthouse on a Thursday morning. Dad showed up with his own lawyer. A different one since Heath had recused himself from representing him. Dad looked confident. Prepared. Like he'd already decided this was a misunderstanding. His lawyer presented first. Argued that Dad had every right to structure his estate however he wanted. That I was an adult who'd lived independently for years. That there was no legal obligation to include me. Then Heath stood up. He was calm, methodical. He presented the evidence piece by piece. The missed birthday posts. The group chats I was excluded from. The wedding I wasn't invited to. The trust documents that named 3 beneficiaries but excluded the biological daughter. He showed the timeline. 13 years of systematic exclusion following Dad's remarriage. He presented testimony from family members. Even my aunt spoke. Confirmed everything. The judge listened carefully. Took notes. When Heath finished, she looked at my father. Mr. Hayes, she said, can you explain why your biological daughter was completely excluded from your estate planning? Dad opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. I didn't think she needed it, he finally said. The judge's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the room. Everyone could feel it. It took 2 weeks for the ruling. Heath called me on a Tuesday evening. The judge sided with you, he said. I sat down slowly. What does that mean? It means the trust has been invalidated. The exclusion clause was triggered. Your father's estate planning has to be completely restructured. And under the court's order, it has to be done equitably. That means you're included. Equal share. My hand started shaking. He's going to fight this. He can try. But the ruling is clear. And there's more. Heath paused. Because the trust was invalidated due to his actions, the court has appointed an independent executor to oversee the restructuring. Your father no longer has unilateral control over his estate planning. Every decision has to be approved. Control. The one thing Dad had always held over everyone. Gone. Dissolved by his own choices. I thanked Heath and hung up. Then I sat in silence for a long time. It wasn't joy I felt. It was something quieter. Something that felt like justice finally catching up to cruelty. The follow-up hearing happened in August. This time, Dad looked different. Smaller somehow. His lawyer presented their case for maintaining some control. The judge denied it. Mr. Hayes, she said, you created a trust that systematically excluded your biological daughter. You claimed it was about simplification, but the evidence shows a clear pattern of favoritism and exclusion spanning over a decade. This court cannot allow that structure to stand. She turned to me. Miss Hayes, given your experience in organization and your clear understanding of these documents, I'm appointing you as co-trustee of the restructured estate. You'll work with the independent executor to ensure all decisions are made equitably. I heard Dad make a sound, almost a gasp. The judge continued. This means every major financial decision regarding Mr. Hayes' estate will require your approval. Consider it an education in inclusion. It was over. Not just the hearing, the entire dynamic that had defined our family for 13 years. Dad had been removed from absolute power, and I'd been given a seat at the table I'd been kept from my entire adult life. When we left the courthouse, Dad wouldn't look at me. His lawyer touched his arm, whispered something. They walked away without a word. I stood on the courthouse steps with Heath. How do you feel? He asked. I thought about it. Like I can finally breathe. Over the next few months, everything changed. The estate was restructured. I worked with the independent executor, a sharp woman named Patricia, who'd spent 30 years in estate planning. We drafted new documents, equitable ones. That included me as an equal beneficiary alongside Rochelle. Dad had to sign them. He had no choice. The court had ordered it. But something else changed too. My relationship with the family shifted. Iris and I grew closer. My aunt started inviting me to things again. Even Rochelle reached out awkwardly, trying to rebuild something. I was cautious but open, because unlike my father, I understood that relationships required effort, acknowledgement, inclusion. The things I'd been denied, I offered freely to others. By November, a year after the birthday Dad forgot, things had settled into a new normal. Dad and I barely spoke. When we did, it was through lawyers or the executor. Cold. Professional. Exactly the distance he'd maintained with me for years. But now I was the one choosing it. And that made all the difference. It's been exactly 1 year since the wedding. The one I wasn't invited to because Dad forgot to buy my ticket. Today is Thanksgiving, and I'm hosting. I spent all morning cooking. Turkey, stuffing, cranberry sauce, sweet potatoes. My apartment smells like home for the first time in years. The guests start arriving at 2. Iris comes first with her husband, then my aunt and uncle, my cousins. Even Rochelle shows up, nervous but genuine. She apologizes for the wedding, for not noticing I wasn't there, for going along with everything without questioning it. I accept because anger only works as fuel for so long. Eventually you have to let it burn out and see what's left. We eat together. Laugh, tell stories. It feels like family, real family, the kind built on choice and effort instead of obligation and blood. Around 5, my phone buzzes. A text from Dad. I heard you're hosting Thanksgiving. I wasn't sure if my invitation got lost. I read it twice. Then I set down my phone without responding. Because Dad taught me something important last year. Sometimes the most powerful response is silence, is absence, is letting someone discover that the seat you always save for them is simply no longer there. He forgot my ticket. So this year I forgot him. Not out of cruelty, out of reciprocity. He taught me that family is optional. That presence is a privilege. That love requires action, not just words. So I took those lessons and built something better. A table full of people who actually want me there. And no seat at all for the person who taught me I was forgettable. That's not revenge. That's simply returning the favor.